Hello and welcome to today's episode. I am your host Atul, and today we are diving into a conversation that isn't talked about enough. What it really means to be a psychologist beyond the therapy room. As a psychologist, we help others navigate their emotions, struggles, and personal growth. But how do we ensure that we don't lose ourselves in the process? How do we balance our role as professional while also embracing our personal identities, relationships, and vulnerabilities? To explore this topic, I'm thrilled to have Aarti Ahuja with us today. Aarti is an independent practicing psychologist with over a decade of experience. She's also the Chief Operating Officer of the Burn Healing Foundation, where she leads social media and community outreach, along with managing foundation's administrative work. Beyond that, she is a passionate mental health advocate, working to create more opportunities for young psychologists through her private practice rebranding. Aarti, welcome. It's so great to have this conversation with you.
Thank you, Atul, for the podcast today, and thank you, Bhavana Healing, for actually getting into this conversation early on in the year. And I'm looking forward to what we can, rediscover about ourselves and help
Yeah.
coming up psychologists know that the word psycho is actually not applicable for everyone, but it's still important to understand the study of the mind.
Yes, absolutely. And I know we both come from the same profession space, but I always love hearing how someone's personal journey led them here. So why don't you start with, sharing, your personal experience, what first drew you to psychology and how that has shaped you who you are today.
I would like to begin with, as a disclaimer first, as a highly recognized, sensitive single child, now a highly sensitive person, when I would be asked what I want to do, I would say help others. It came from belonging to a doctor family. I think I vicariously learned to serve people in different capacities. It got ingrained in me as a conditioning, if I can say that. Adding to this was my own journey of being a late diagnosed dyslexic and ADHD person. And in the 90s, the awareness was very minuscule. Along with that, the attitude of the teachers and the students around wasn't that psycho-educated, or it wasn't even supported. But coming from an educated background, like
Hmm.
of my parents and of the society that I moved in, was very encouraging and very, you know, a sense of belonging. And then because the outside world didn't perceive it like that, I faced my own emotional challenges. I encountered grief, loss, rejection, abandonment, and weighing in my metabolic syndrome and my weight issues didn't really make it, a happy childhood outside the home, in society, or even in daily school life. But the support of my school teachers and the support of the school curriculum was so great that it harnessed my abilities. I'm from one school, Varakamba Road, 2009 batch, and the way the school shaped me is something that is so wonderful, that everything that I wanted to do, even with the lack of scholastic abilities, the school gave me a
Hmm.
platform, a chance. And even today, I'm a part of the Old Students Association that gives me an identity being something beyond being the psychologist that I am. These experiences opened me to raising my awareness through
Hmm.
various insightful and powerful, like aha moments, if I can say. If I was traveling with my parents or just observing other children be a part of house functions or other activities, and that
Hmm.
differentiation, being the outsider while still being the insider, got to keep me open to so many perspectives of life, questioning. And then I had a grandfather who always encouraged my questioning. The whys, the what, and the hows that we use in therapy were quite regularly used with me. So I think I was being trained to be a psychologist even before I knew what subject I would be taking.
Yeah,
Because for
yeah.
everything I would ask why, how. So that is something that is synchronicity was at work for me. I think the
Yeah.
universe, if we believe in something higher and if we believe in energy, then I was always supported, I was always protected, and I was receiving the goodness of people who were consciously aware of how to treat others with humanness and kindness. So that's
Mm,
about me.
yeah. And I think that's really interesting. Like, I'm sure it's been a very, very long journey for you, Aarti. And along the way, you found your own support system, you had your own challenges. But I'm quite inspired to see how, your own personal challenges have shaped the way, we practice, obviously. Like you said, the why and the what and the how. It's something that you learned even before you got into this profession, which is so essential, right? And that's how the conversations also start. The curiosity begins, I feel, with, when we're engaging with people in general. Um, and now as psychologists, we spend so much of time, helping others make sense of their emotions. Um, and a lot of other things to bring in more clarity, insights, right? But how do you personally balance being Aarti, the psychologist, and the Aarti, the person? How do you ensure that your identity doesn't get lost in your work?
In psychology, it is said that the self is no different than what you do. So sometimes, yet as a psychologist, the differentiation of a professional and a personal being
Mm,
becomes challenging when you're trying to be social with my already existing
mm,
challenges. The last 8 years, when I felt confident enough outside my family circle to establish myself as a person, were very tricky, were very challenging, whether they were friendships made beyond school and family realms, whether they were relationships made, because every time the sprinkle of ADHD and dyslexia confetti in my life compartmentalize these areas of observing, feeling, analyzing, and therein I found that you can seek out people who have emotional depth, but the intellectual depth that I seek or that intellectual curiosity that I am inborn with is not met after a point. Does that make me weird? Maybe to a lot of people. But
mm,
if I am emotionally met with, and then the next phase of intellectual identification is not that similar, I tend to move away from people because I recognize that their journey along with me was only that much. I've met some wonderful people over the past 8 or 9 years who have had deep friendships with me, or I've had deep equations and connections with me, but they have not been
mm,
sustainable. I take it as
mm,
a personal challenge and a personal inquiry within myself. You say knowledge
mm,
is power. We believe that, right? We believe that as psychologists also. So, going within myself and understanding that this knowledge is actual power to adjust
mm,
my energy, express myself, and the privilege to be able to cultivate my being through society and through these interactions is so makes me so grateful and humble that I just can't really take it for granted. So what I did
mm,
was that every time there was a challenging personal situation and it came to a point, an impasse point, let's just put it like that, wherein I felt that the energy of the other person was draining me and not letting me work in my autonomy and in my selfhood. I politely walked out of the situation. I
mm,
politely, with communicating that why I cannot be in the equation, why I am feeling threatened, or why
mm,
I cannot have that energy around me. Yes, I
mm,
identify myself as a loner. Yes, over the years, I have cultivated going out on my own, being on my own, but it is not solitude. It is not something that is bad for me. It is good
mm,
for me because from there I'm able to experience creativity. I'm able to experience a lot of other things and create more than what I can when I'm engaged with people, because that energy interferes in being able to think, observe, and analyze in most ways possible.
mm. Yeah, yeah, and I think I completely relate to that. It's a lot about the self-awareness, but it's also about creating that balance. I think that's very, very important here. Um, Another challenge that I've noticed generally, Aarti, is that, how psychologists are often seen as experts. Like we always have everything figured out. How do you navigate that, perception while also staying true to your own vulnerabilities and, let's say, personal growth there?
To add a little humor to this conversation now, देखो दुनिया वालों, हम दिमाग नहीं पढ़ते, हम कुछ नहीं पढ़ते, ठीक है? हम
Mm,
सिर्फ उस चीज को रिस्पॉन्ड करते हैं जो आप लेके आते हो हमारे सामने. So, first
mm,
of all, psychologists are not gods. People in the healthcare profession, people
mm,
anywhere in any profession are not God or godlike. Let's be human towards each other and say that we are playing these professional roles that help us in different capacities in our lives. So, similarly with the psychologist, we are not doing anything great. Yes, we are. But as human beings, we are first being humans in the profession. We have our own vulnerabilities, we have our own challenges to face. And that is why when I introduce myself as a psychologist, I always
mm,
say I'm a humble human being also along with that. Because I put my vulnerability forth, and I've always done that to make sure that it gives even one person that chance to say that, okay, they can feel, they can be in that moment with me.
mm. Yeah, yeah. And it's like even though there's so much of awareness about, the profession now, but yet people get confused that, psychologists can read minds, which is unfortunate.
The
But
awareness
I,
that I see is in, those certain socioeconomic
yeah,
segments and in
yeah,
drawing rooms and in conversation. It is not in behavior. These are the
yeah, yeah,
same
exactly.
people
Yeah,
who are talking about it, but behaving with double standards. You
mm,
talk
mm,
about cultivating yourself as an individual. You talk about cultivating yourself as a professional. But at the same
mm,
point in time, people want to take those choices of being in two boats, of getting
yes,
married, of having children.
mm,
Those are personal choices, but the
mm,
conflicts that they bring in. Correct, we all have more work with those conflicts coming in. But let's
yeah,
be honest that first of all, are you as individuals strong enough to make choices, take accountability? The
mm,
biggest thing that I have done in the past 8 years, which has been traumatic enough, like Carl Jung, the famous Swiss psychoanalyst, and
mm,
now the father of psychoanalysts, said that the 8 years that he discovered himself were very profound, wherein he wrote
mm,
the red books and he wrote all of that. That came from solitude, that came from observation. And the personal journey of a psychologist is as much important as their professional journey, from where they come, from what they experience, and those insightful moments. We all have them. The
mm,
therapy room is not only the therapy for the client, it is therapy for us as well. That is why we need to be in supervision. And I tell a
yes,
lot of younger psychologists and people wanting to study psychology, 11th grade, you decided you want to be a psychologist,
mm,
great, put yourself in therapy as well. Have one psychologist working along with you since you decide you want to become a psychologist, because you will learn how to behave like one in professional settings, see that professional setting, but also experience therapy so that you know that if they're missing out something with you, what you
mm,
don't have to do. I was very lucky when I began my training to have great environments to work in. I worked in Max Biology, Parparganj, and at Amity when I finally rejoined Amity. We had some wonderful teachers like Dr. Sonakshi Rohela, Dr. Sakshi, Abha ma'am, who was the head at that point in time, Anuradha ma'am, Tamanna ma'am, the list goes on, Rupali ma'am. So all these
mm,
senior teachers were also professionals, and the way they conducted themselves in class was sometimes so amazing that you saw that how they also conducted themselves in sessions. We learned so much by observing, and even the internships we did. My most insightful internship, I would say, was when I worked in the Child Development Center at Loknayak Hospital, Mamsi. That
mm,
is where I identified that I cannot work with children.
mm,
That is where I learned that my niche area is with adults, because parents from that socio demographic would come up and talk to me about things. When I did my MA thesis, which was again on burns, on understanding quality of life in burn care, adults, small infants whose parents were shocked by their children being burned, they would come sit, talk to me for hours together. That is where I realized that my ability is of being a communicator. So all this happened through a process. All this happened through being able to put myself in that zone of solitude and not allowing my energy to be dissipated anywhere else. You only get these moments when you can recognize and are consciously aware what you need to build up in solitude.
mm,
So this is
mm,
what I was building. Even Picasso said that solitude is important to create something. So
mm,
again, it's a healthy solitude that I am operating and working from. And I'm very grateful for the people I've encountered in my life. I might be bad in their story, but I I might have hurt them, and I take this opportunity to say sorry to them, but I've forgiven myself because I had to grow from there. I couldn't remain there and not grow. Similarly, in professional situations, I've had various challenging professional situations. The ADHD and dyslexia changes perceptions a lot of times. A lot of times, when I collaborate with other people, due to other challenges, due to my health challenges, I might not be able to take it forward. But it doesn't mean that I don't have the passion or the commitment. I could have had let's say, $1 billion practice by now, but
mm,
I've taken it slow. I've understood my challenges. I've understood again my vulnerabilities, not my inabilities, but my challenges around the situation. And I'm working on it. And I'm creating. And like collaborating with you today
mm,
is just a validation and a purposeful start to the new year, saying that we all are in the same space. We all are creating what we can create for ourselves, paths
yeah,
and ways, and attracting clients that are meant to come to us. We can be on
mm,
social media, we all are. Even this
mm,
will go on social media. But
mm,
who has to come to us? Who has to sit in front of us as a client? Somewhere is preordained. So, what we
mm,
give to people is what we are ready to receive equally, even professionally.
yeah. I love the way you put that, Aarti, and it's I think a constant process of self-awareness there, isn't it? For us psychologists and the person who's coming into the therapy room, because you're constantly learning from them as well. Definitely. Um, but I think one of the biggest challenges in our field that I personally see, and what I've heard from other psychologists as well, is that the objectivity that we need to maintain while still being human, right? At least that's what we learn in our textbooks and universities there. Have you ever found it difficult personally to separate your personal beliefs or emotions from your work? And if so, how do you go about managing moments while staying authentic there?
I think that that is something coming from a doctor family. My grandfather was a dermatologist. My father is
Mm,
a plastic surgeon. My mom's a
mm,
gynecologist and obstetrician. That
mm,
learning happened, objectivity being the main way of looking at things, got ingrained in me when I was very young. Like I said, why, what, and how. even in
mm,
personal situations. Is it helping me? Is it helping the other person? Or how am I
mm,
going to use this information ahead?
mm,
So that way of thinking and that way of governing myself has always been something that I have practiced, taught, and I think has become second skin. So the objectivity part is easy, but it is not easy in social interactions, because that is where, like they say, that different universes collide together, different thinkings, conditionings. So it is very difficult for me to convey to people at large, as friends or as acquaintances who have come across in life, that I can be that objective to say, okay, if this is not happening, what is the solution? What is the next thing we can do?
mm,
People
mm,
like to sit with things, people like to create that entire area around a situation and cause a conflict, because their energy is limited to that. Their
mm,
energy is limited to that understanding, and then they don't see that they're sowing a seed of conflict, they're sowing a seed of negativity. For me, it is that if it's a negative thing, I acknowledge it, I accept
mm,
it, and if I can change it in any way, I am not wanting to control a situation. Nobody can. If
mm,
only I can bring about a change in my action, in my thought, and in my behavior, I do that and I move on. I
mm,
don't sit with it. So I create opportunities and spaces that make me feel safe and make me able to function within them. And that recognition only comes from a lot of jute chappal khawing, actually. It's not easy. Saying all of this, there is a compartmentalization in my brain saying, really, am I speaking this? Acha, next time there is that emotional, vulnerable situation, babe,
mm,
remind yourself.
yeah, yeah,
See, the duality of it, the polarization, like we understand as psychologists, is so vast. And to be able to sit at that point zero, coming back and
mm,
saying, we know nothing and we are learning in every situation. I have
yes,
not stopped assuming, I have not stopped, forming opinions. But what I have stopped doing now, after 8 years of this churning out of myself, is stopped wanting to be in situations, stopped wanting social
mm,
validation, stopped
mm,
knowing new places, and not new places, but stop knowing newer a sense of people. The people who are there now, I respect and honor them, and I'm very grateful that they give me the space to be. So I do this as a purposeful activity after every 1 or 2 months. The good people that I have around me, I thank them. I show them gratitude by sending a text or a message that thank you for being there. Thank you for letting me be in my space. Because I know and they know we are there for each other emotionally. My best friendships today are across the globe. Some are across India, some are across the country, like outside. But these are the deepest relationships I have that have a distance because it works for me. It might not work for
mm,
you, it might not work for anyone, but that is how
yeah.
it works for me, and I'm grateful for that.
It's definitely a fine balance that you found for yourself, Aarti, and I'm truly, truly happy to see that. And I think this brings me to a very important question, very related to what we're just talking about. How do you protect your emotional well-being and make sure you don't carry your clients' struggles with you outside of sessions?
As psychologists and as people in the healthcare professional, we never stop thinking about our clients because we are humans.
Yes,
But the
yes.
professional training that we get to say, बस अब हो गया, अब बंद करना पड़ेगा वो थॉट बॉक्स, उसका वो आंसर और बीडीएस उस स्टेटमेंट का ये स्कोर लेकर आ रहा है, लेकिन दैट इज नॉट व्हाट ही इज रिप्रेजेंटिंग क्लिनिकली. ये
Yeah.
इंक्वायरी बंद करनी पड़ती है टू अ पॉइंट ऑफ सेइंग दैट their journey is being shared in confidentiality, and
mm,
you're grateful that they're sharing their journey with you, but their journey is not yours. You're
yeah,
only facilitating a change. That recognition that you cannot change them, that
mm,
being human, that you are getting
mm,
affected. If I get affected by other people's constant involvement around me
mm,
energetically, as a psychologist, I recognize this, that if I think too much about a client, I get equally affected, similarly affected though.
yeah,
So then,
yeah,
what I have started to do is that between every session I conduct, I always keep a 15-minute gap if possible. If not,
mm,
at least half an hour, wherein I
mm,
decompress, wherein
mm,
from beyond professional notes, I write personal insights. I always keep a diary. It's not journaling. I've kept a diary since I was 5, since I started writing, doodling,
wow.
writing, sketching. So there is more junk than journals in my house. I can put it
Yeah,
like that. But that process of being able to sit there and say, okay, my client's revelation today brought me to
mm,
this point, brought out this within me, and I have to differentiate it from my professional avatar and my personal avatar. Being able to write. Please, younger people, your iPad is not your source. Write your emotions. When you write the emotions, there is a neurocognitive pathway created of acceptance. It
mm,
is of feeling, it is of being aware in that moment. You're creating your own consciousness right there. And when you do that, your emotion suddenly becomes lighter. You don't have to really go to a therapist, but these are smaller tricks. And when these tricks don't seem to be working, then you come to us. And we can also go to other therapists. That's another big thing.
mm,
Supervision, being able to call up another therapist friend and say, hey, you know what? These are my personal insights. I'm getting confused. I don't know what to do. And not having egos. As therapists,
mm,
if we have egos, even professionally, we cannot grow work together. Our
mm,
ways of doing therapy are absolutely different. I learned this from the surgeons around me. सर्जरी
mm,
का एक स्ट्रक्चर है, थेरेपी करने का एक स्ट्रक्चर है, लेकिन आपका हाथ, like cooks and surgeons, I learned this from them, that जो आपके हाथ का स्वाद है एक कुक के लिए, वो हर किसी का अलग है. जो सर्जन के हाथ की फिनिश है सूचरिंग करने में, वो हर किसी की अलग है. सेम वे फॉर
mm,
थेरेपिस्ट. हर किसी का अंदाज अलग है कम्युनिकेट करने का, वही फैसिलिटेशन. तो
mm,
इसलिए अगर हम लोग ये रिकग्नाइज कर ले एज प्रोफेशनल्स, वील बी एबल टू collaborate better. It's not one-upmanship who's earning more or who's earning less. It is about who's creating more value along with being reciprocated for their time, energy, and right being there. कई बारी लोग
mm,
बोलते हैं why do you charge an X amount. मैं कहती हूँ I'm okay by charging this. Yes, I come from a privilege. Yes, I'm cushioned, but I don't want to make it unaffordable. अभी इंडिया में वो structures नहीं है जहाँ पे
mhm,
एक fixed amount आप charge कर सकते हो. If I go towards that greedy bandwagon, then I won't be able to sleep at night. I won't be comfortable as a person. So for now, what I'm charging, I think I deserve that and I ask for that. People ask me for sliding scales, people ask me for free sessions. Then I politely say that maybe I am not the psychologist for you. So by
yeah,
doing that, I'm not denying people therapy, but I'm just showing them that each psychologist is not for each individual.
mm,
I'm creating that boundary. So, creating boundaries professionally is as equally important as in the personal space. And I do that. And now there's no shame and guilt. I worked in supervision on that shame, guilt of pricing, of boundaries, and
mm,
also of collaborating. Recently, I collaborated with Christ University Delhi student Kajab and a senior professor, Dr. Neeraj Pandey. We
mm,
wrote a paper on NEP in Anganwadis together, and it was presented by Gajab at a recent ability conference. But what
mm,
happened, like how my ADHD kicked in, and a little miscommunication of what was being
mm,
presented when made me express it in a different way. And I'm very, very sorry to them that that expression was something that I felt that I was being denied the presentation and I was being denied the chance of being presented. That miscommunication was something that had a lot of factors around it. But now to objectively look at it is also growth, learning. And I'm grateful to Dr. Neeraj Pandey that he somehow, being an elder, being a
mm,
professional, and also being a teacher, didn't react to it in a way maybe somebody else would have. That showed
mm,
professionalism. That showed जिसको हम हिंदी में बड़प्पन बोलते हैं. And from there, I learned being humble again. I've been across people who have been very humble and very down to earth and accepting of their flaws. And I'm also accepting my flaws.
yeah. It's like you're being true to yourself while you're placing those boundaries, while you're communicating openly, and also just finding that balance. I think you're doing all of it, Aarti, and I can see that you're doing it wonderfully there. And with that, let's switch things up with a fun round of fact or myth here, right? So I'll say a statement and just tell us if it's a fact or a myth and why. Yeah. Okay, so here's the first one. Psychologists never struggle with their own mental health. Is it a fact or a myth?
It's definitely a myth. We all struggle because we are all human.
Yeah,
If we are alien, if there are few aliens in the world of psychology, we come across them, but that's the alien mind. And if they're actually aliens, then hello, long lost people.
no, because people do have this misconception that you have to be perfect and then only you can get into this profession, and
Oh,
psychologists
I
don't face mental
this
health.
word perfect, I've turned into perfect. Like cat's purr, I'm like keep purring.
So absolutely, it's a myth, and I think it's so important to remind people that psychologists are human too, like what we just discussed and previously as well. So here's the next one. It's easy for psychologists to leave work-related emotions at their door. Is it a fact or a myth?
We bring our emotions along with us. If we are humans, we'll feel the emotions. And the distinction and the ability to actually sieve them out is what we
Hmm,
do as in a professional space. And if we do it for ourselves, I always say, अगर 1% भी as a psychologist in their personal spaces हम psychology से ले लेना तो हम अपनी जिंदगी को बहुत ज्यादा evolve कर सकते हैं. It's a part of a process and the progress that we are denying ourselves. ये
hmm,
differentiation जो हम बोलते हैं between a personal self and a professional self, but there's a point when it meets the point zero, the point of
yeah,
identification. And if we can imbibe from our profession and start behaving not in an idealistic way, but in
hmm,
forging out what is good for us, बहुत सारी चीजें sort हो जाएंगी.
hmm.
At least
कहीं
in
ना
the
कहीं
process होंगी.
yeah. I was just saying कहीं ना कहीं emotional boundaries की बात कर रहे हैं तो it's very
Hmm.
very important. Even though it's not always simple, but it takes real effort. And if you make those efforts, it's I think manageable. You can do it.
नो बोलना और नो सुनना दोनों की
Yeah,
स्ट्रेंथ होनी चाहिए. सिर्फ नो
yeah.
बोलने का प्रिविलेज और एटीट्यूड नहीं रखना चाहिए. आई थिंक दिस
Yes,
इज
yes.
वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर एवरीवन टू
Yeah,
रियलाइज कि नो सुनना भी आना चाहिए.
yeah. I think that's a very important point. We always it's easy, like even though it's not easy to say no, but even though we say it, but if someone else says no, I think it's hard for us to take that. So either way, you have to, be habitual probably or make efforts in just making sure that you're able to say that and listen to it as well. Um, and I think the last one is being a psychologist makes it harder to maintain personal relationships. Is it a fact or a myth?
It's a myth for those who don't recognize that it is a fact. Everything that you
Mm.
said as facts and myths, these are myths for those who don't recognize them as facts. So, my friend, the reality is that yes, it is hard. It is very, very
Mm.
hard. And like I said, for myself personally, the sprinkle of the confetti that I have within myself of being neurodivergent makes it a little more harder because
Mm.
I not only have to compartmentalize that neurobiological divergence, but I also have to compartmentalize the ability to be able to fit into society, different kinds of societies,
Mm.
different kinds of clients that come to me. And then the foundation that I work for, Burn Healing Foundation, we are providing reconstructive surgery to absolutely underprivileged, poor burn patients. My dad has been
Mm.
in this space for 30 years. He was head of department at Munana Azad Medical College, and he is the
Mm.
only Indian who was president of International Society of Burn Injuries. At an
Wow.
international level, when they talk about burn injuries, whom are they talking about? Countries like India. India is the burn capital of the world. And other
Mm.
African countries. अभी US एड ने कितनी सारी एड हटा दी है. उन कंट्रीज में
Mm.
हेल्थ केयर वाटर ये वो हमारी कंट्री में द बर्डन ऑफ बर्न केयर इज सो हाई that now it comes on us, organizations like us, people who want to advocate in this space, to come
Mm.
together to create the cohort. The cohort is not only support, but the cohort is a financial cohort, the donations and the money required to take it forward. So if everyone is aware of what the cause that they attach themselves to. You asked me in the beginning that what beyond psychology. This is my beyond psychology, the human aspect of giving back to human beings that have given us so much as a family. Doctors are successful not because skill, yes, to be able to communicate their skills, yes, but also because of their patients, because their
Mm.
patients have been there. So it's a combined effort. If my family as doctors have been successful, we are grateful. That is why we began this foundation. We are grateful to those poor, underprivileged patients that my dad researched on, served, to be able to rise up to that international level. My mom is grateful that when she came back from UK in 1990, she was able to work in Daryaganj colonies and in Daryaganj smaller hospitals to grow where she has today. I am grateful to be able to get a chance to work in different kinds of establishments. And also during COVID, I had my phone ringing 200 plus suicide prevention cases.
Mm.
Later on, they turned out to be suicide prevention, but at that point in time, somebody just needed that कोई बात कर ले,
Yes.
कोई सुन ले, and कोई एक awareness हो आपके अंदर कि आप हो. So the biggest thing
Mm.
for me that I learned over these part 8 years is the awareness of being myself. And in
Mm.
that, having that confidence that everything is around and resources सारे होते हैं हमारे पास, उनको यूज कैसे करना है. और अगर हम किसी को नो बोलते हैं, हमें हेल्प मांगनी भी आनी चाहिए. Help
Mm.
Mangni as a human being and even as therapist, psychologist, not therapist, sorry, that's a wrong term to use, psychologist, because we are only MA graduates.
Mm.
We might be, some of us might be doing a PhD like I am, but the nomenclature should be psychologist. And I would hope
Mm.
that we start calling ourselves the right things as psychologists. यहाँ
Mm.
पे मैं एक चीज ऐड करूँ अतुल, I hope you let
Yeah,
me
yeah.
take this
Yeah, yeah,
opportunity.
yeah. Sure.
There are few books and few documentaries that have helped me as a psychologist really find my
Mm.
voice. Especially the
Mm.
Red Book by Carl Jung. I keep going back to it. It's a constant, regular, ongoing read for me. Then the
Mm.
book Freud's Last Session, which is Lee W. Carroll and Freud's discussion on the existence of God. See, all
Mm. Mm.
scientists and everyone come to the point zero, that existence of energy. Call it anything, call it any symbolic form. but it is energy that we are sharing amongst each others. And then there is a book, Rumi and Self Psychology, that is
Hmm.
by Ron R. Rad, if I
Hmm.
believe.
Hmm.
And then two books, Letters to a Young Therapist by Marion,
Hmm.
and even Wilom's Letters to a Young Therapist and Patients. So when Ivan Wilom writes, and the interesting part that I found out was Ivan Wilom is born on 13 June 1931. I am born on 13 June 1991. So I'm like
Oh.
those many years,
Hmm.
same time, and I checked up his I got a chance to see his birth certificate somewhere online, and the time is also very similar. I'm like, cool, man, validation from you. So see, resources are there. We have to find our moments of finding that sense of gravitas
Hmm.
and also
Hmm.
identification. You have to create it for yourself. It takes a lot. It's a daily cycle. You get up in the
Hmm.
morning, you feel nice. Then something happens, you feel downright bad. But the
Hmm.
ability to keep moving, keep being in that process, and keep telling yourself that it is good because you're able to have your basics in place and help people equally with that same gratitude. I think that's all that I've been able to do. And that's all that I want to do even ahead, like the next phase of my career and my life, completing my PhD and going out and creating a professional space for young professionals wherein they can find their voice and
Hmm.
also find their own ways of doing therapy while building up their therapeutic skills and
Hmm.
learning and making me also learn a lot more. So, if I'm remembered as somebody who constantly learned and was able
Hmm.
to create these avenues, and through my foundation, create the legacy that I have of my dad to be able to take it to the world globally. It has already gone once globally. Now I'll take it the second time. So I will roam around the world with the Indian heart, with the Indian spirit, and with a consciousness that is totally rooted in being a global version. Thank you,
Great.
Atul.
Great, great. I think it's about finding ways to make it work, and I can definitely see you have found your ways to make it work there, Aarti. And I can say that it's not just you, but you've also been very influenced and inspired by the people around you, your own family members there, obviously influencers and the readers, everyone out there, psychologists. And it's great that you're still learning and it hasn't stopped, and you want to do more things. And I wish you the best for that.
Thank you.
Um,
Same to you.
yeah, thank you so much. And thanks for playing along, Aarti. And thanks for sharing the resources as well. But as we wrap up today's conversation, I just want to take a moment to thank you. The way you balance authenticity, your professionalism, it's truly inspiring. And I know many people, whether they are psychologists or not, will take away some valuable insights from the discussion. And before we sign off, do you have any final thoughts or advice for, let's say, fellow mental health professionals or really anyone who is trying to balance their professional and personal identity?
I think that there is something that comes to my mind. This is a book by Robert Adams. It's actually a book of his collected satsangs.
Hmm,
And I just want to read one part of it, which I thought I would read it
sure,
in the end. Just give me a
sure,
second.
sure.
So he says here, this is page 158, and it says that trust in the power that knows the way. It starts like that.
Hmm,
He says, you see, you live in a universe which is self existent, self abiding, self sufficient. This means that all of your needs are met from within. All of your needs are met from within. But this will only happen when you accept it this way. If you think your needs come from a person, place, or thing, you will always got a fight on your hands because you're hoping to get a better job or get some money in the bank, or that someone will come along and help you with some problem. These are all erroneous thoughts. If you could only learn to rely on yourself, miracles
Mm.
would take place in your life. If only you learn to rely on the self, exactly from where we began. Point zero, Atul.
Yeah.
That's how this conversation has been. Thank you for taking me through my life and making me so grateful again. And it's been a humbling discussion about being myself in this crazy space that is evolving. And like Bhavana, the Bhav, Tattva, my work's name, Essence.
Mhm.
See how similarly we all are related. And
Yeah.
synchronicity brought us together for this conversation. Let's take the
That's
bhav and the essence, the tattva together, and
wow.
let's see the miracles unfold.
Yes, and that's such a powerful message. Um, Thank you again, Aarti. It's been absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. Wishing you all the very best with your work at the Burning Foundation and your private practice and your PhD, of course. And you're doing amazing things. And to all our listeners, thank you for tuning in today. I hope this conversation has given you something to reflect on, whether you are a psychologist, someone in a helping profession, or just trying to figure out how they stay true to yourself in your daily life. So until next time, take care, everyone, and see you in the next episode.
Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning into today's episode. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we love creating it. If you found value in this conversation, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, subscribe to our channel for more amazing content, and hit the notification bell to stay updated to all our latest episodes. We love hearing your thoughts, so drop down a comment below and let us know what you think or what you expect. Stay tuned, stay curious. Thank you so much.